How are you doing?
Hey, everybody. Good. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me about this project, Performing Human Rights. So would you like to introduce yourself to the rest of the team?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanne LaSala Taylor. I am an actress and a writer, and I live in Larchmont, New York, which is a suburb of New York City. And I have two children, aged 5 and 7, two girls. Yeah, we've been out here in Larchmont for 3 years. I was living in the city prior to that for a long time, and that's me.
So what have you been doing this past, just before COVID became a reality? What was your life like? I know, of course, having two kids, you told me 5 and 7.
Mhm.
That's your life, I can imagine.
Yes. Yeah, they keep me very busy, and it's but and I'm mostly at home with them. I have been mostly at home with them while they were since they've been born. But I have done various different I've done some acting work. I've done lots of different things since being a mom. But things had just gotten really exciting right before all of this happened. I wrote a book last year that got published, and it's a children's book, and we launched the book on February 4th. So the book, I started promoting the book in about November, late November, early December of 2019, and started going to promotional events and bookstores and talking about the book and interviews and all sorts of things, and book signings, and it was a lot of fun. And then we launched the book with a big event in Manhattan, and the FDNY was there. The book is about the FDNY, and the book gives back to the firemen through the part of the proceeds of the book go to the New York Firefighters Burn Center Foundation. So they were all there, and it was this great celebration, and the book was doing really well. I had a lot of events on the schedule. I was supposed to be in Park Slope and Union Square and Barnes and Nobles, and kind of starting my book tour, as it were, and everything came to a halt. And no more events. I had one event the week of March, whatever that was, March 8th. I had an event that week nearby, and it was great. And I had a ton of kids, and it was just a lot of fun. And the local firefighters came, and it was a really nice event. But it was we all were kind of aware that this was, maybe the last fun thing we were going to be doing for a while. Last group of people we were going to be able to get together. And yeah, so everything came to a halt. I started homeschooling my kids, and that was something that I took very seriously right from the beginning. I think I, took it on as a project, and really wanted to make sure I kept them in a routine and kept them, doing things that felt normal to them. I didn't want them to get scared or to get upset by all the changes and by not being able to see their friends. And it was a little scary around here, because we were really the epicenter of the epicenter. Because I don't know if you had heard that one of the first big cases in New York happened in New Rochelle, and New Rochelle is the town next to us. So we were in New Rochelle all the time. It's, there's a lot of shops in New Rochelle. It's kind of a commercial center. So this one man had tested positive, and he infected everybody. I mean, like a ton of people got it from this one man. They were able to trace it back to him. And that was really where it started in New York. It wasn't even in Manhattan at that point. It was really here. So it was a little weird, a little awkward at first for us. And then it started to become much more serious in the city. As April came around, it was got really scary in the city. And then I was worrying about my husband, who goes into work in the city, and whose business was considered an essential business, so stayed open. He's in the food industry, so his business stayed open, so he was working. So it was really just kind of, keeping everything positive and trying to, keep the kids on a schedule, and keeping our house from, imploding, everybody being home. And yeah, that was my focus for a while. And then, once things kind of settled down or settled into a routine, then I started to focus back on the book and try to think about how to keep promoting it and to keep, keep it fresh and keep it out there while all of this was happening. So I enlisted my kids and we started making these videos about the main character in my book, Bunny. So we had Bunny in all of these videos and talking about what Bunny was doing during lockdown and how Bunny was coping. And it turned into really more of something about how adults are coping, like how adults are getting through this with their kids. And, because that was really my audience on social media, was more the adults. So it kind of morphed into more of that. So I've been doing those videos. It's been, keeping it just something, keeping me active and thinking about the book. And then I've done a bunch of readings online for people and for various libraries and things like that, and trying to keep the interest going. And I started working on a play again that I had put aside for a while. I wrote it years ago and never did anything with it, and then kind of dusted it back off. And I actually worked with a group of playwrights in March, and we were on Zoom calls once a week, just kind of going over, new pages and stuff. And it was nice. It was nice to be able to work on that again. And now I'm thinking about trying to do a reading, and I'm wondering if I should wait until we have a little bit of clearance. Maybe I can do a reading with people in a room, or if I should do it on Zoom. I'm still trying to figure it out, but at least it's back in my wheelhouse again.
So you have been very busy.
Yeah, it's been busy. It's been busy. And then there's been moments of, staring out the window and, and I'm very lucky. We've been healthy, and we've been, able to entertain ourselves. And so, and none of us are in the line of fire. So we feel very lucky and very, very blessed to be able to relax a little bit and enjoy our time together as much as we can.
Can you tell me more about Just a Bunny and the Great Fire Rescue, which is the title of your book? Yes. And also, I am fascinated by that because speaking to a younger audience is quite challenging. Mm-hmm. So how was that experience? You told me a little bit about the history of this story. Can you share with us all, because there is so much beauty in it, and also as an artist that is expressing herself through some visuals, through some kind of mythology there that is happening. So can you tell more about that story?
Yes, I'll tell you about the story just to give you a little bit of a background about it. But it was a true story that happened to my children and I when we were living in Manhattan. We had gone out to our favorite park, and we were playing in our favorite park. And my daughter, who was 3 at the time, always brought her favorite bunny with her everywhere. And I tried very hard for her 3 years to get her to stop bringing this bunny everywhere, because we would always lose it inevitably somewhere, and then I'd have to go crazy trying to find it. Or, I was always worried we were going to lose it because she slept with it every night, and it was her security blanket. It was her everything. So I didn't want to lose Bunny, but she had Bunny with her at the park, and it got late. We were having so much fun. It got late, and I thought, oh gosh, I'm never going to have time to get home and get these kids fed and get them bathed and in bed in time. So I'm just going to grab something quick. We're going to go to this Mexican restaurant right here, and we'll grab a quick bite to eat, and then we'll go home. And so we sat down at the restaurant. I was going to order them a quesadilla really fast. And by the time the waiter came back to take our order, he was like, "You're going to have to leave. There's a fire in the kitchen." So I grabbed the kids, and out we went, right out the door, because as soon as he said it, I smelled it. I knew it was a fire because I had lived through a fire in 2007 before my kids were born. In one of my apartment buildings had a major fire, and I was woken up at 4 a.m. with that smell. So I was like, oh, I knew it right away, and out we went. But this being New York City, we knew there was a fire happening, but we just went to the restaurant next door. We were like, that's okay. We'll just go to the restaurant next door and we'll eat there. It'll be fine. Meanwhile, there's a fire happening like right next door. But so we went, sat down in the next restaurant, ate our dinner really quickly, got the kids out the door. They were, about to fall asleep on me. And then my daughter, Francesca, said, "Where's Bunny?" And I was like, oh no, where's Bunny? I don't know. Where's Bunny? Did you leave him next door? She's like, I think I left him. at the other restaurant. So out we went. And by that point, the fire trucks were everywhere. The tape was all around the restaurant. We couldn't get in. So I went up to a fireman and I said, "Sir, please, can you help us? My daughter thinks she left her bunny in there." And he turned to me and he said, "Is it her sleeping bunny?" And I said, "Yes, it's her sleeping bunny. I think it's her everything bunny." And he just, without saying another word to me, he turned and ran into the building and came out a few minutes later, this expression on his face. And he's like, had his hand behind his back. He's like, "I'm really sorry. This was all that I found." And he had bunny and we all went crazy and we were so happy. And we never forgot him. He told me his name. I never forgot his name. We told the story all the time to anybody who would listen. And finally, one of our friends in preschool just said to me, "You should really make this into a book. It's such a great story. It's such a good New York story about, a stranger helping someone and about the firefighters and how great they are." And I said, "I really would like to, because I had been rescued from a fire in 2007. I had lived through 9/11, as a New York City girl, and lost a lot of friends, and knew what that whole thing had been like. And I really wanted to do something to say thank you to the FDNY. So I did. I wrote the book, and then I didn't know what to do about it. I'm an actor. I didn't know how to publish a children's book, so it kind of sat for a couple of years until I was talking to a friend who had become a children's book author, and he put me in touch with his publisher, and they were really interested, and it just ended up working out. And it was an amazing process. Once I, was able to work with an editor, and then they found the illustrator for me. I talked to a bunch of different illustrators that I knew, and then they had found some. And so I had a lot of illustrators doing test sketches for me, which was amazing and so exciting, and very much a theatrical experience. It felt very familiar at that point. I was like, "Oh, this is, I get this. These are the designers and I'm the director." And I'm kind of, it was really fun. And I found somebody, just like, when you're a director and you find that designer who just really gets your vision right away. And, it's just like, yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I found that illustrator, and she's based in Spain. So it was, I've never met her face to face, but I worked with her through my editor, which apparently is a normal process in the book world. You don't talk to your illustrator directly, you talk through your editor, which that made me a little uncomfortable. I was like, "But I want to talk to her directly. I want to get to know her. I want to, and they were like, "No, this way, it's, everything stays, there aren't any arguments or any disagreements." I'm like, "Well, okay." So but it worked out great. I mean, I would give notes to my editor. She'd pass the notes on, and the illustrator would make adjustments. And that was a really fun part of the process. And then the book was here, and I got to start promoting it and showing it to kids. And during the whole process of writing it and editing it, I had been taking it to my kids' friends and to classes and reading it and seeing what the kids thought. And it was really nice to get their feedback and to see what spoke to them, because I knew the story spoke to adults. Adults got it. They were like, "Oh, my kid has, a favorite bunny too that they would die without." And they got it. They responded to it, but I wanted to make sure the kids were responding to it too. And what the kids really responded to was the fireman. They loved the fireman. They loved that he was the hero. They loved how he ran into the building and was so brave. And that's what really got them excited. And it was really fun to see their responses. And to also, I brought them, pictures of what the different illustrators were doing. So they got to see how that all worked. And it was fun. So I had my little test groups of kids, which was great. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to see, to see how kids respond to it, and to read it to them, and to see how excited kids can get about a story, and how much attention they will give to it. It's a lot of fun.
That's just wonderful. So
Yeah.
are you planning on, I read somewhere that you want to make it into a series, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, once I wrote it, even before I had spoken to a publisher or even thought how I would even do that, all these ideas started coming into my head. It was like, well, there are so many stories that we have that either we've been through, I've heard friends have been through. And I wanted to tell the story of what it's like to live in the city, in New York City. As a longtime New Yorker myself, I wasn't raised in the city, but I'd lived there most of my adult life. And I love New York City, and I love the people in New York City, and I love how the city works. So it was really fun for me to be able to, like, what I wanted to do is to be able to share. Sorry. Oh, no, not right now. Okay. No, thank you. My husband brought me ice cream.
Oh, it's so nice.
So I wanted to be able to tell what that was like to live in the city, and I wanted to share that experience. But I also wanted to thank the people that make the city work, like the firefighters and the police officers and the sanitation workers and the hospital workers and people who really make the city run, and the UPS guys, like, I mean, just all those people that really keep the city rolling. I was always amazed at how well that all worked. And I just wanted to thank those people, because a lot of the times they're sacrificing things for New Yorkers all the time. Firefighters certainly do, and police officers certainly do. But their time and their families, and they put their jobs, it's so important to them, and they care so much, and they make such an amazing effort to make the city run. And I wanted a way to thank them. So I was thinking of different ways that I could do that. So that's part of the reason why, part of the proceeds of my book will give back to the firemen. And then I'm in the process of writing a story about the police, which was funny because, I didn't have like a direct connection with the NYPD. And I was like, I don't know, I don't really have like a story that I can think of, I'm going to have to kind of either create something. But I was like, I want to do something for them too. And I can't, and police are a little bit more controversial. So it's a little harder sometimes, but, for kids, I think the understanding also of the fact that these are institutions that we've created to help us and to make our communities safe and to make our communities work. And in our giving respect to them, we can hope for that respect in return. And the more respect that we give to each other, the more we can hope for in return. So I think that was something that I really wanted to do. And I couldn't think of what to do for the police, and I was going crazy. And then one day I was driving into the city, and I was behind a police officer, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to brainstorm while I'm driving, and I'm thinking about what could I do? And then the police officer drove off, and I was still driving, and I was thinking, and then, I'm in traffic, and then out of nowhere, someone comes and hits my car. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she pulls in front of me, and she slows down. She can tell she's hit me. And then she starts to drive off. And I was like, oh, what's happening? And then out of nowhere, this cop comes, this not undercover, but off-duty police officer comes and cuts her off, stops her, gets out of the car, and is like, you hit that woman, you need to stop. And I was like, oh, my hero. And I was like, there's my story. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make it somehow a bunny story. And that's going to be it. And I'm going to thank that person because he was amazing. And this woman would have run off and never taken responsibility for her actions. So a lot of the theme of what I'm doing is selfless acts of kindness that people do for other people all the time. It happens in New York City all the time because there's so many of us living on top of each other. That what you hear about the bad stuff, and you hear about, how we hurt each other and the things we take from each other and, all these things, but you don't hear the stories as much of what people do for each other and how much kindness you see every day and how people help each other out. And so that's what I really want to celebrate about living in the city is how much of that really does happen, and how, if children can understand what a difference a small act of kindness can make in somebody's life, hopefully they'll think about making them more often.
So you have turned your new passion for writing for children's books also into activism, it seems to me.
Yeah, a bit, yeah. There's an undercurrent of activism there. Yeah. I mean, when you're raising kids, it's just hard not to. I think you see how the world is, and you want the world to be a certain way for them, and you gotta do something.
Right. So I'm very curious to know how you, Jeanne, have through your creative activities, have you been able to endure the quarantine, the lockdown, as opposed to someone who is not a creative, who is not an artist?
Mm-hmm.
we artists have a way of surviving. We used to that all the time, and often just a creative endeavor. The fact that you, with your kids, have decided to do YouTube to market your book, then they become something else. I understand. I would like to hear more about that. So probably you have friends that are not artists that may have dealt with this situation differently.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can give us a sense and compare, especially in a place like New York City or around New York City?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, as we were discussing, I think, it's artists, artists are able to create anywhere, anytime. And I think we're used to having the situation around us be a little bit challenging. either, it's just, that the funds aren't there, or that the time isn't there, or that the space isn't there, but the impulse to creativity is there. And so you'll just do it. You'll figure out a way. And I think that that's the artist's way. You always have to just figure it out. I mean, I ran a theater company in the city for 5 years, and it was just, nobody needed it, really. There were plenty of artists already creating brilliant work. Did they need another theater company? No, but we wanted to do something. There was something we wanted to do. We were a group of people that we wanted to do it, and we had the impulse to do it, and we had the passion for it. So we did it. It didn't matter if anybody says, oh, it's a good idea, or yeah, we've got a ton of money for you right here, or we've got this great space for you. It doesn't matter. You have that impulse, and so you create it. And I think that makes the artists, makes artists as a whole able to weather a lot of storms. And I think you see that in, everything from Hollywood movies about, how artists survived the Holocaust to, that's how we do it. We take our art and we turn it into something else, or we make it work for the situation. But I think particularly when times are like this and emotions are so raw and people are expressing themselves more, there's more of that creative impulse that comes out. There's more of that need of like, okay, well, I need to do something about that. I need to either write something about this. I need to help harness that energy that I'm finding, that I'm feeling, and create something out of it, make something out of it. I had mentioned to you that I was working on a play that I had written a long time ago. And it was, it has nothing to do with COVID, but it has to do with an illness and about taking yourself out of society. And, and it's amazing to me that it's like, wow, you see those connections with what's happening in the current moment, and you just have to, you have to go with it. So I think it's funny because for me personally, part of what I love about theater and part of what I love about writing and what I do with the children's books is how it brings people together. Like that's what I love. I love the bringing together of people. That's, that excites me. That gets me going. I don't love working in solitude. I don't love having to be home all the time and not being able to interact. I don't love the fact that I, can't be in the city with lots of people. And, it just, that to me has been hard for me. But being an artist, I think I've been able to take that emotion and that sadness and say, okay, well, I'm going to keep putting my energy into these projects that I know are eventually going to bring people together. I hope. And that gives me hope. And, who knows if it'll happen or not, but at least that gives me something to keep me going. And, I think that's also one of the great things about being an artist is that you can, no matter what's happening, you can still create. No matter what's happening in the world, the walls can be falling down around you. You can still find that way to bring people together and help them get through. So I think that helps. And I've talked to a lot of friends who aren't artists and who are getting through this time. And I think it's a lot more looking outward than looking inward. And I think the artists at this time tend to be looking inward. And that's the impression that I get, at least. People who aren't artists are looking outward for things to help them, and people who are artists are looking inward for ways to help, which I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the impression that I've been getting.
Could you articulate that thought a little bit more according to the experience you have?
Well, I mean, I can just say that, I certainly have decided that part of my Just Bunny series is going to be about healthcare workers, because, I'm amazed at, what they've been sacrificing and what they've been doing. And there's not much that I can do from here for them, except find a way to either reach out or to thank them or to bring people together in a way to thank them. And, as a writer, that's something that I can do. I can think of a good story that'll, be more positive than negative and get kids excited and be a way to maybe give them some uplift or to thank them for what they've had to sacrifice, through this time. And I think, that's kind of the soul of an artist. Either you're helping yourself get through something or you're helping other people get through something, but what you're doing is creating a way for people to get through it together. Either they're going to look at your story and say, I know what that means, or I've been through that and I've been there and I can relate to that, and that's helping me, which is what I think the non-artists are doing right now. They're looking for something out there on Netflix and binging shows and saying, I need something that's going to help me understand how I'm feeling and help me get through this time. And, the artist is looking for ways to make those connections.
When you say I'm looking inward, I know exactly what you're talking about. But I would like for you to, good point, it's a very good point. That's exactly what we do. What does that mean? Can you try to explain it to somebody else? And the point I'm trying to get at is that is also that I'm discovering talking to the artists, is that we have so much to offer in addition to our art. Mm-hmm. We have to offer our life experience, mm-hmm. right? Some of our process. But we artists, at times, we think that the only thing we can offer is the art. It's not true. No. One thing that I've discovered in this conversation is that if the governor Cuomo has asked, and I don't know the situation, but I think that if Cuomo around the table had some artists, that would have helped him.
Yes.
Even more than what, I know that he's both very active and he has, from what I see, has done a great job. And this is the point. At times artists do not think that what they have to offer is just their work, but we have to offer more than that. So in you explaining to us what it is going inward is also giving a glimpse to others, because I think that everybody can go inward. The way in which we go inward and create art is important. So we do just spend a few minutes in thinking about that, because it's kind of your process, right? And each artist has a different process, but we all go in there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's about understanding in these moments of intense emotion and intense things happening in the world, that part of our process as artists is making sense of that for yourself, and feeling the feelings that you're feeling and not discrediting them, and noticing the emotions of others around you and not pushing them aside, taking that all in and processing it and then and then experiencing it. I mean, it's like you said, it's not just then creating something. It's not like you have to be some sort of factory or something like that. It's just that you take a moment to observe and to process it for yourself. And I think it's been a real time of, just going through those emotions. But, artists, I think they're looking at the whole experience, but then processing it through their own experience. And that makes us not just like astute observers, like you were saying, you know, somebody who might be useful to Cuomo. I mean, what he needs is somebody who's able to observe all of it and then process it through an open heart. Somebody who, you know, says all of that is valid. Everything you're feeling over here, everything you're feeling over there, everything you're thinking about that, all of that's valid. So now what can we do? How can we as a society get through this together? How can we get better at what we do? And I think we've all had to take a look at how we do things in the world because of what's happened. We have to take a look at how we respect each other, how we respect the earth, how we, you know, how we respect our time. You know, the fact that people don't have to be spending all these hours commuting from one place to another gives them this time that they didn't have before. And a lot of that time is being shifted towards their families. And it's a very different place for a lot of people to be in. And it's scary for a lot of people because it's just so different from what they've had to experience before. But I think, you know, for artists, you tend to have had this like crazy roller coaster of experiences. So you haven't had like one simple trajectory where you've had everything, you know, nice and heading in this direction and everything's going up, or, you know, for artists, it's always so crazy and you have so many stories that it makes the processing of all of it a little bit, not easier, but more accessible. So it can be of great use to people having to figure out, well, what do we do now? And how do we move forward? And how are things going to be different? And how can we support each other through this instead of pushing each other back into an old box? You know, you got to create a new box, and it's you know, it's a little bit scary. So, you know, having somebody who has that sensitivity makes a big difference.
So tell me about making those YouTube videos with your kids about bunny. Because I actually happen to have seen at least one of them. Well, you were doing those also during COVID-19 where things... so can you describe to me that experience of creating with your kids? Must have been beautiful. Difficult, challenging, you know.
It's been beautiful, it's been challenging, it's been silly, it's been, you know, but it's been fun, and they're very excited about it. They all want to be a part of it, and they want jobs, and they want to, you know, it's like, no, I don't think you don't need to hold the camera. I can put the camera there and we can just let the camera sit. No, I want to hold the camera. Okay. So, you know, you see how they get really excited and passionate about these things, and it's a lot of fun. You know, a friend of mine, I was talking to one of my dearest friends who I actually was in my first show ever with her when I was first started as a professional actor. She and I worked together. We've been friends ever since. And she said, you should really you should do some videos about what Bunny's doing in lockdown. And I said, that's a great idea. I will. I'm Bunny in lockdown. I'll do some videos. And I've been on this incredible learning curve with social media since I wrote this book. Like, I knew nothing about social media. I posted pictures of my kids, but that was about as much as I did. I didn't know anything about how Instagram worked. So I was trying to figure this all out. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to get more Instagram followers, and maybe these videos will help. I don't know. And I couldn't do anything else for my book at the time. So I thought, all right, I'll give this a try. And so I was doing these videos mostly about Bunny and what Bunny's doing to stay creative and how Bunny is social distancing. And they were, you know, pretty ridiculous at the beginning, but they were fun. And then it slowly morphed as I realized my audience was really the parents. I mean, the kids weren't watching these videos. So I started to make it a little bit more gritty and a little bit more realistic about like how we're coping with lockdown and what it's really like having your kids all the time, and, you know, no breaks and all this stuff, and how you cope with it, and which has been fun because it's very meta theatrical in a way, because here I'm saying this to my kids who are videoing me or or part of the videos, and they're hearing all this. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I messing them up, or should I even be saying this around them? But they think it's all very funny, and they love it. So it's been an interesting process. And the most recent one we did, I was with the kids, and my daughter Isabella, who's my younger daughter, decided that the video would be a lot better if she was in it. And then she got in the video with me, and all she did was just mug at the camera and like start dancing and doing all this stuff. So basically the video that I ended up posting was just a series of outtakes of Isabella being insane and getting in the way of this video, which is kind of like every artistic experience that any artist I'm sure is trying to have right now. Like, you're maybe trying to be in your studio and paint, and your kid's going to come in naked and start, throwing things around. It's just the way it is right now. So it was pretty funny, but yeah, it's been a fun experience. I have friends that have told me that they love them, and but there may be 5 people who are actually watching these videos. I have no idea. But it's been fun. It's been a fun project for us, at least. And I've been trying to do them like only when something strikes me, like, okay, I have an impulse, something that comes to me that would be fun or interesting or fun that I want to share, and not trying not to make it a scheduled thing. Because at first I thought, I should post these every day, and I should do something every day, or else nobody will care. And I thought, no, that's not really genuine. I need it to be a genuine inspiration. And once I have a genuine inspiration, then I'll share it. And some of them have been better than others, but it's been fun.
Well, I see that the joy that you have in telling us about this experience. So, a last question. Do you want to go back to the normal?
No, I'm already seeing some ways that things are starting to go back to normal, particularly with my husband. As New York is starting to open up, I mean, it's not really opening up yet, but it's like there's this kind of anticipation of opening up where things are already starting to open up, or at least amp up towards opening up. And I'm noticing, we're seeing a lot less of him already. And I'm like, I don't really want to go back to that where we don't see him all that much. I think one of the hardest things for us moving out of the city was that he was always kind of around, and he might pop in and see us at a park, or he'd be able to pop over to my daughter's school for a concert or recital or something like that. When we moved out of the city, we lost that. And he's much farther away, and it's harder for him to come see us in the middle of the day. So it's been really nice having the whole family together, and it'll be hard to go back to not having that again and to being busy. But I think I'm definitely looking forward to that human interaction. That's something, that bringing of people together. For me, for my kids, I'm definitely looking forward to that. But there's a lot that I would change and not want to return to what we were doing before. We had this little whiteboard schedule that we would do every week, and it was always packed. I mean, just packed with stuff. And I was very adamant about not overscheduling my kids, but somehow it just happens, and you have tons and tons of stuff going on, and I'm going here and they're going there, and babysitters, and it's just I don't necessarily want to go back to all of that. I think the time for some introspection, the time for some boredom is healthy for everybody. But I think we have to think about how we push ourselves away from our centers all the time. Like, that just has been the way that the world is going. We live farther away from where we started. Our families are farther away from each other. Everything is kind of moving away from the center. I don't know if that's the healthiest way to be, or if maybe we can bring a little bit of this with us as we go forward. Maybe we've learned something.
Let's hope so. Well, Jeanne, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely.
It was wonderful to see you again.